Hello and welcome back to the Long Island Retro Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Staub, and I have an awesome guest with me today. I have the coordinator of our retro PC section at the Expo, Anatoly Shashkin. Welcome. Welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Hello, everyone.
So, Anatoly, like I said, you're the coordinator of our retro PC section.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, retro gaming is not just about consoles. It's
Right.
not even just about retro consoles anymore,
Right.
right? Retro gaming has grown and has become this kind of its own environment unto itself. Retro PC seems like it might be a little tricky.
A little bit.
So, can you give us a little bit of an idea or rundown of what the retro PC section has and what it's all about?
Well, at the moment, and it's constantly changing, is
Mm-hmm.
the right now, and that's already going to change next year. But this past year, we had I don't even know how many computers running old DOS and Windows games from 80s and 90s. I think there were about 40, maybe more. It was a lot.
That's
It
a
was a
lot of
large.
PCs.
It was a large section, and most of them were modern day machines running emulators
Mm-hmm.
of old games.
So
Yeah.
now, you're running emulators on modern machines. Now, are
Yes.
you when you're running an emulator, right, on a modern machine? Is it emulating an older version of Windows so that it can run the older games, or is it just running an emulated version of the game that works on a modern OS?
It depends on the game. In
Okay.
90% of the time, I'm running an emulator that emulates older hardware
Hmm.
and DOS, the operating system. I
Yeah.
mean, as much as it was, but I had several games that used earlier versions of Windows, which ran in the same emulator and stuff. So it really just each one is on a case by case basis.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the general case with. I mean, you still get that a lot with PC gaming, right? That you kind of
Absolutely.
sometimes have to tinker even with modern stuff. But when you're looking at the retro environment for PC gaming, I feel like platforms did get standardized later on. I feel like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I felt like it was even more about tinkering back, 20 years ago or
It
so.
was mostly because it's so very different. I mean, and it's the reason why IBM PC and clones sort of took over the
Hmm.
computer world, because there were non-standard configurations of non-standard clones, and because the technology was advancing so fast in those days, there's just like thousands possible configurations. I mean, there's nothing to compare it to even today, apart from maybe Android phones. There's
Yeah. Okay.
there's maybe enough configurations of Android phones because there's probably millions that you can
Yeah.
get even today, and it's about the same amount of PCs runtime. But I mean, it's some people think it's difficult, but it's not honestly as hard as it looks, and there's just certain eras you have to watch out for, because PC retro vintage PC game and just general PC gaming, first of all, it never went away, right? So we're still
Yeah.
sort of on IBM PCs, although lately they've changed significantly from what they were back in the day. But um, it covers like even the area that the era that I tend to like mostly refer to, right? The DOS era. It's from like 81 to around 98, 97, 98. That's a giant chunk of time in video game time.
Yes.
And it's multiple console generations,
Yeah.
right? And even multiple generations of like 8-bit microcomputers or 16-bit microcomputers. So,
Yeah.
and when it comes to IBM PC, all those things are very fluid. So like you can get configurations of all over the place during any of those times, so that makes things a little bit trickier. But again, like I said, like it's not that bad. I wouldn't want to scare anyone off, and especially these days there are all kinds of like pre-configured things. I mean, these days there's even like emulators and browsers. You can open a web page on any device of your choosing, and a lot of the games like are ready to be run,
Yeah.
and they run just fine, which is great.
So what you're saying is your job at with LIRetro is very stress free, right?
uh it's sort of it's becoming less stress free. I feel like with every year we're like ironing out
Yeah.
more and more. I was actually very pleased with how the last one went, and it was I would even go as to say it was nearly flawless for my section.
Hey,
There are
very
some
nice.
things that I need to take care of, but of course we can't have everything. But it's going to get more complicated because, and here's a teaser for the next year, what's already been in progress as George is picking up more and more hardware along the way. In addition to God knows however many emulators we're going to have more and more actual vintage machines, which is what, of course, what people want, and that gets a bit trickier, and of course my life will be a bit more difficult going into that, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I'll say this much, everyone who works for the Expo just does a terrific job, keeping their sections new and interesting and always doing more stuff. I work in the museum section. For those of you who are listening, I work with Brendan Bailey in museum section. Brendan Bailey and I have been close friends for quite a long time now. So it's cool to be able to work with someone you're very close with. But I know we have a section of that area that was, like vintage PCs and stuff
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. So
The Brandon section was great because it was like a little bit. Well, pretty much each platform was like represented.
yeah,
Like it was
yeah.
a room of like actual vintage computers, and some outside. There were some Amigas cameras and some like really exotic stuff. But what's going to happen is all of that is going to stay because it's like that belongs in the museum, right? It's
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
it's like they're proper museum sort of things, like one of this, one of
yeah,
that, one of
yeah,
that. But PC gaming, and we had like two PCs, like one modernish there and one like really old, right? And a PC Junior.
yeah.
But what's going to happen? All of that is going to stay, and in addition to that, there will be like, I don't know. At this point, it looks like it's going to be like at least a dozen of actual vintage PCs in the PC section for people who want to maybe a slightly more authentic experience.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, right? Because what I like about how the expo operates is that we do things that cater to people who don't have experience with this stuff as frequently. For folks like us, seeing a Sega Genesis might not be a huge deal, but for someone who's never played it, or for someone who
Of
played it as a kid
course.
and lost it, that's the biggest thing ever. But then there's always stuff that goes a little deeper, right? There's stuff that gets a little bit out there, like you said, more of a vintage experience. Um, so I want to actually bring it back to what you were talking about earlier with having to tinker with all these different emulators and stuff like that. And I want to talk about the newer vintage stuff as well. But when you're tinkering and stuff, are there specific games that like give you a lot of problems, or is it just case by case basis? Or
It's a case by case basis, and I'll be honest with you, I am probably not like the most rational person when it comes to this point, just because I sort of kind of do that on a daily basis, and
okay,
just for my like social media project and stuff, and I've been doing it
okay,
for so long, it's like it's a like second nature to me, and there are very rarely cases where like something doesn't work, like
oh well,
very rare cases. And of course technology also gets better, like the emulators. PC emulators were notoriously inaccurate even, let's say, 10 years ago. So, and but it didn't matter because those games, targeted the 1.5 million configurations, and you could argue nobody really knows what the authentic experience is. It's just sort of like a general idea. You would play it on the CRT, you'd probably play it off the floppy disk or hard drive, and you have some kind of a keyboard and mouse, but like the parameters vary wildly. Like it's
yeah,
not a
yeah.
Genesis game where like it's all the same, just the difference is what kind of TV you had.
Well, that's also
So
kind of it's kind of how PC gaming works today, right? It's based
yeah,
on your system.
absolutely.
It's based on
Those
what
things never
graphics
went
cards. Yeah,
away.
yeah. There's the ever tinkering. I think
Hmm.
if you're in PC gaming, and I feel like as someone who got into PC gaming later in life, I've kind of gotten into PC gaming over the last, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. Ever since I like started, getting custom builds and stuff like that. As a kid, I really didn't do a lot of PC gaming, but it always felt like there was a little bit of a difference, right? Like PC gaming and console gaming. Now, obviously, the PC stuff was always more powerful. They were always doing more stuff with PC, and
Sort of.
compared to yeah, I feel like the PC experiences that I grew up with, were very first person driven,
Mhm.
real time strategy stuff like that, and then the console stuff was a little different.
The audiences
Um,
were separate,
yeah,
which
they were.
which is something why I like to like one of the talk. My first talk, I think I gave at the Long Island Retro, was precisely about that, trying to entice people who maybe have not experienced a lot of PC gaming, especially back in the day when it was a bit more niche. I mean, today you can be a PC gamer. You don't need a gaming machine, but like if you don't want to run like the latest games, if you want to just run some weird stuff and stuff, you can play on your laptop and it's perfectly
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah.
right? But back in the day, because the audiences were so different, so gaming on games on consoles and PCs differed because
Yeah.
consoles were better at certain things and not so great at certain things, or just by the nature that consoles had great graphics, but they didn't have 104 keyboards, and
Yeah.
PCs did, and only like engineers had them. So like that's the audience divider right there. So you get a lot of
Mhm.
like role playing games, a lot of like hardcore simulators, something that would never come to a console just because, well, it would just be counterproductive to put out a game like that on a console, and there probably would be no audience. Now things are kind of split. I mean, games of any kind of complexity get released on whatever platform because the audiences are so large.
Yeah.
Uh, it sort of cross pollinates and stuff, and even and consoles got so much more complicated. I mean, console gaming essentially is also kind of PC gaming. All those things that didn't exist back in the day, like day one upgrades or whatever, all the stuff that was always like things being broken, that sort of was relegated to PC gaming for a long time. All now is essentially is all available on consoles as well because they're essentially
Yeah.
just giant computers. So
Yeah, that kind of feels like it, right? It feels like everything's based off of the same PC architecture,
yeah.
and what changes it, is little differences here and there with
Just a little
console
bit
gaming.
accessibility, and of course the exclusives is what drives the market. Like certain
Yeah,
licenses and stuff, which is
of
how it
course.
always has been. So
What's weird though is now we're seeing more exclusives find their way onto PC.
yes,
I mean, Sony obviously is the big one, right? We're seeing so many of Sony's first party games make their way to PC now, which I think is great because I think accessibility for gaming is really important. And I think it's also kind of like super chaotic because of the modding community. But
of course, yeah,
they like to have a lot of fun, and they are awesome. Like the stuff they
yeah.
do with mods is so incredible. So when did you kind of, as someone who kind of understands the history of PC gaming and stuff like that, when did that shift really kind of take place where, there were separate and they've kind of merged together where a lot of the games you could play on console, you could also play on PC?
I think, well, it was a semi-gradual process. I think for through the entirety of the 90s, there was still separate ecosystems because the
Mhm.
architecture is so wildly different. But then Xbox comes around,
Yeah.
and Xbox essentially just like a little underpowered PC with a big video card. That was their selling
Yeah.
point, and their development kit was just a PC. I mean, like you would literally just you didn't even need to pipe anything out. It was just a PC. And the beauty of it was where their self-for developers was, well, on PC you already work with DirectX stuff. That's how
Yeah.
you write stuff, everything. And
Yeah.
here's just a PC with a very standardized configuration, which is made to use the same API, the same everything, and that made it
Okay.
very appealing for developers. And of course, they dumped a lot of money into it and blah 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 and all that
Yeah.
other
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. And that's when it started to shift. And that's also when everybody else went away. Remember, Macs used to have their own CPUs as well. Like Macs and PCs were very very different architectures,
Yeah.
hardware wise. But Macs, I mean, now things are changing again. But but
Yeah.
but that was also around the same time where Macs just were like, okay, we're just now Intel and GeForce as well. Like they
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
were essentially just PCs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so around, I would say like mid 2000s, and that's when like PC gaming, like it was popular with a certain people before with a certain like tech savvy things. But I think that's in the mid 2000s, that's when things started being like really really affordable.
Yeah.
Like you maybe didn't need to spend like $1,000 anymore to get a good gaming PC. Like people started getting into what it took to build one, and building a PC, I mean, I'm not very technically inclined, but like I can put things together from separate parts. It's not that difficult. You just sort of have to look up what things works with what ahead of time, so you don't then plug them in and be like, whoops. uh, that's probably the worst you can do. So it's fairly easy, and people started building more computers, and the market got bigger with Microsoft trying to actually sort of rein in, and that was also the time of stores, of digital stores. Digital
Yeah.
stores started appearing, and all of those factors sort
Yeah.
of um, because for a while people like really said like, oh, PC gaming is dead, like in the early 2000, in the mid 2000s. Like
Yeah.
I remember that was like a thing, and then like indie game boom happened,
Yeah.
and everything else happened, and then like the sales went through the roof, and PC game, you never know, it started being appealing, and
Yeah.
here we are. It's definitely not going away soon, even though people every like 3 years people are like, oh, the PC part sales are down. Well, maybe it's because each new video card costs $3,000. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, video cards luckily have come down in price.
Thankfully.
Thankfully, yeah, I finally got a 3070, so it took me
Oh,
2
yeah,
years,
lucky.
but I
I'm
finally got one.
still as much of a PC gamer. I'm still on 1060. I don't care. It's fine.
I was running a 1660 Ti for a while, and I subbed it out after a couple of years, but probably about 3.5 years. But but yeah, no, I definitely remember that shift happening. The Xbox 360. I think the Windows PC controller helped a little bit for
Yeah,
games
sure.
that were definitely more inclined for controllers. But you're right; it seems like it was a gradual thing. And you look at some of these sales reports from companies that that produce games, and they're seeing a lot of sales.
Yeah.
Sometimes the majority of their sales are on PC now, and I think it's just like you said. It's just it's not as hard to build one as it used to be, and you could really build a budget model and kind of run with it and still get a lot of fun out of it. And the indie scene and all that stuff is really really special. So back to retro because obviously this is what we're supposed to be talking
That's what
about.
we're all about.
Back to retro and classic PC gaming and things like that.
Mhm.
So if someone is new, right, to
Uh-huh.
PC gaming in general, or they're new to the retro scene and they want to get involved and they want to experience some of the stuff that we have, but on their own, is there any
Mhm.
advice that you can offer to these folks, like where to get started?
Yes. Okay. That's a question I get very often,
Yeah.
and it has several possible answers.
Okay.
And something I always have to bring up from the time PC gaming, and just generally, it's not just IBM PC, right? Even if you like have like an Amiga or something, it also
Yeah.
applies. So a lot of that stuff, and part of the reason why I am very interested in this, because it's from the time, especially like we go back like 30, 35 years, goes from a time of like a lot of experimentation and stuff, and but nothing was being, there was no standards for anything, so people just like throw whatever at the wall, and you know
Yeah.
seeing what sticks. And as a result, a lot of PC games are very very interesting, but not very user friendly, to say the least. It again varies on a case by case basis. I'm pretty sure everybody can pick up Doom and play
Yeah.
it at any given moment in time, even though we now don't really play with the same controls that people used to play back in the day. But that's beside the point. It's like Super Mario Brothers. But like that feeling what you get when you like start playing like one of the early NES games,
Yeah.
and it's not A to jump, it's B, and it already
Yeah.
screws you over. So like
Yeah.
like it's the same but times 100,
Yeah.
because like it's so very different. So it takes it depends. Like I would it's not that I'm deterring anybody. I, on the contrary, say if anybody wants to um get into like vintage PC gaming who have never experienced it, uh prepare some patience and some perseverance. It will pay off, but you will definitely need it, because just for the games itself, not the running stuff, because games can be a bit unruly, hard to get into and stuff, but there's tons of stuff to discover. Now if people want to play something, well, there's several ways to do it. I've already mentioned there's a lot of games just available online, as I said, ready to play in browser, like
Yeah.
pre-configured and whatever. You can use your search engine of your choice, and if there's a game you want to check out, if you want to play the Oregon Trail in browser, there's plenty of places where you can do that, and it will be just ready. You can play it probably on your phone, even though it's not going to be particularly convenient with the PC version and stuff. But you can do it, and if you have a computer, if you do have a computer, it doesn't have to be anything. There are services, there are games on Steam. If you're on
Yeah.
Steam, there are games that are pre-bundled with DOS emulators, usually DOS box, and you can experience them. There are even, of course, because of a PC gaming and the sort of the open source community, there are commercial as well as free re-implementations of games that are open source that
Yeah.
will probably give you some extra features that weren't available back in the day, but you will be able to experience the game as it was. And if you don't know where to start, which is a very big thing, because we don't know how many PC games are there. We will never know. It's an open platform.
Yeah.
We know there's at least 4 or 5 thousand, probably, like just DOS games alone. There's probably at least double, and that nobody knows about. New games being constantly discovered, and of course, games being constantly lost as well. So such is life, I guess, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's
But
a shame.
yeah, but like that is the medium for it, like. So you sort of need to figure out what are the genres that you like, because on PC they're very different from console, especially when it comes to retro gaming. As I've mentioned, gave a talk about it several years ago, the Long Island Retro, that's available on YouTube. So if you do a search for DOS Nostalgia Introduction to Retro PC Gaming, I'm sure it will pop up somewhere. And if you're interested in any of those titles that I showed or any of the genres, that's where you should begin looking. There are also services of digital distribution like GOG, and Zoom platform, which will also give you ready to go packages, legal, officially licensed, that you'll be able to run on your PC. Some of them just Windows, some of them Windows, Mac, and Linux, depending on what you have. And those are all you have to do is pay money and download and run it. Like usually those packages are completely done and you don't have to do anything else. I will tell you this to people who are listening who that haven't experienced PC gaming. If it comes with a manual, you probably want to read it. Like it's not like one of those like, like I own a bunch of Nintendo games. Some of them come with the manuals, and I don't think I've ever looked at them. When it comes to PC gaming of that era, you like reading the manual is unless it's like a first person shooter. Reading the manual is usually crucial because games of that time do not handhold you, and they usually just
Yeah.
like throw you in the things. And if you want some kind of a general overview of interesting titles for PC, if you just do a search in a search engine of your choice for list of worthwhile DOS games, it's actually somebody. Well, I know who it is. I'll say somebody. Somebody made a JPEG of 100 games exclusive to DOS, that are worth checking out, according to their opinion, and I happen to agree with most of it. So it will give you like 100 games of different genres from over like a span of decade, and you can just go through it at your leisure and see what fits you more, what you're into, what you're not into. But it's all going to be interesting.
That's cool. Yeah, so be sure to search that out, folks. Especially if you're interested in retro PC and its history, right? Because that's kind of the point of LIRetro in general. While we run this really fun expo that people can come and play these games and have a good time, there is also that educational aspect to it where we kind of want to open folks' eyes to things that they can experience and enjoy as well. Um, you mentioned a bunch of stuff. You mentioned a lot of games, a lot of stuff on DOS. Is there like one game at the convention that everyone is always kind of bugging you about, or that's super popular, or
Yes, it's here. It's the Oregon Trail, hands down. In fact, as the years go by, the Oregon Trail section will just keep increasing in size. I already have ideas for next year. But yeah, the Oregon Trail in America is a very popular game.
what is well, I mean, I will be honest. My experience with the Oregon Trail is we played it in PC Lab in
Mhm.
elementary school, and it was a quote unquote educational game that was okay to have in schools. So I think that's why it was
That's
popular.
what it is. But as I have somebody who's been sitting for 3 days last year and realizing that even 6 stations with Oregon Trail is not enough. Or did they have more than 6? I don't know. At least 6. I've seen people of all ages play it. It's not just that, but we sort of live in the internet age of meme power.
Yep.
And what happened with Oregon Trail maybe a decade or so ago, it came back full force as a meme thanks to nostalgia. So kids who couldn't have possibly played it in a PC lab when they were kids. They're very aware of the game. So much so there's like a brand new remake released 2 days ago for $30 that you can buy.
$30, $30
$30.
Oregon Trail.
Yeah, $30 Oregon
Oh,
Trail just got released 2 days ago. And of course,
I'm
as
not
we know,
paying.
there's two handhelds that you can two different handhelds you can buy in Target. And like Oregon Trail just got it came back in a big way because it has like recognition, and also because the game itself is educational. It's also very accessible, right? It's
Yeah,
accessible and funny. Everybody, like everybody is aware of the concept. It's a concept that translates very easily even to people who have not played the game, and it already sounds funny. So like
yeah.
that's the thing. It's both the people who played it back in the day and like the new generations who are just aware of it just for like that name recognition.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's fun when it's funny when you see, folks who are probably 20 years younger than the Oregon Trail wearing shirts saying you died of
Absolutely.
dysentery.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things where it's kind of become like ever present, ever
Yeah,
present in the
it's a part
whole
of a
PC retro.
culture. I mean, I will also say it's a very American thing mostly. Like it's a
I think that makes perfect sense because,
it was in school. It was in schools in America, and but
yeah, yeah,
I cannot because I live here. I cannot now judge the last 10 years of that impact outside of America. Who knows? Like I was aware
yeah,
of that game because I was a DOS guy and stuff. But I couldn't
yeah.
care less for about it or like Carmen San Diego. We did not play Carmen San Diego or Oregon Trail in a Soviet school. Like when I was a kid. That was just not the thing. So, but like for all I know, because internet and memes are just so global and stuff. For
Yeah.
all I know, maybe that the reason that remake got made, because I don't know if they're going to sell a $30 Oregon Trail remake outside of America, but who knows? Again, I don't know. At least at this point, it's hard for me to judge. I maybe should do a poll on like Twitter or something, asking like
Yeah.
followers if they are like acutely aware of the Oregon Trail.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would be actually a great question, a great poll to ask folks out there around the world. It's like, are you familiar with the Oregon Trail, and are
they're
you
going to be
you find it
familiar.
funny?
I will have to like very narrow it down to like being like, have you played it? Like I know you were aware, but have you played it like you personally with like until like 10 years ago before it became like have you
Yeah.
played it before or after it became a meme essentially? So which would be interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because it like the memes has become like kind of ubiquitous. It's just always present, and
Hmm.
people, and it also kind of like a lot of like Nintendo characters and or Pac-Man or something like that has also just etched itself into kind of what I like to call like the fabric of entertainment culture in general,
Absolutely.
to where folks who don't even play games
Right.
are aware of it, have played it, know that, like, know the memes. There's a tabletop card game of the Oregon Trail.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where I understand that it's omnipresent, but I find it funny every time.
Well, internet
Um,
made certain things like really come back in an interesting way that you would never say. I mean, like, look at it. Who ever even like uttered the name Bubsy
I
in like late '90s, early 2000s? Like five people who had the unfortunate luck to pay for them, and then that's that. But like Bubsy came back. Like there was a big time where like everybody knew who the Bubsy was. They brought the games back. You can buy them. And
yeah,
it's like there was like even I don't know if there was like a new game at one point in development that fell through.
I
We
think
should all
there
be
might have been.
grateful, but it's like yeah, like who thought that would happen just because of the meme power, like
There's meme power, and also I think there is a nostalgia factor too, because we see a lot of old games get repackaged
yeah, sure, it's a
that
market.
and get quote unquote remastered, and I'm like, why are we remastering a mediocre game from
Yeah,
15 years ago?
yeah,
Because X amount of the hundreds of thousands of people will
that's
buy
right.
it, so maybe the
Limited
Oregon
run
Trail will sell.
games. Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't expect to see $30 remake. I'll be honest with you, but
that's
but,
that's that's a
but
lot.
that's yeah. I'm shocked, but we'll
But is
see
it
how
on
it goes.
Game Pass?
I don't know. I don't know. I know
That's
it's on.
something to look at.
I know it's on Steam, but like, yeah, $30 for things. But I mean, come on, like, I shouldn't even this be like limited run games announced last year that they're gonna be putting out plumbers don't wear ties. And who
Yeah,
thought that was gonna happen? You know what I mean? So
they can if they can
why are they
prove.
doing it? If like that is not a product, it's only a product because of its recognition as a joke.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, like
like
Desert Bus.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. So it's definitely there's a recognition there, but I think it's great that folks are maybe that could be a bridge, right? Maybe that could be
No,
a
it's
bridge into
awesome.
more retro PC. You know, it's
It's
I think it's
amazing
great. Yeah,
because
it's really really cool.
it went through a thing that only 5 people knew about to a thing 500,000 people know about,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
cool because in the end it's just recognition.
Yeah, it's recognition, it's accessibility, and it's just, when stuff gets repackaged or remade, if enough people like it, maybe they'll do something with the property that's interesting or different. So I'm always happy to see what comes out of these spots. And like you said, sometimes I look at it in disbelief, but I'm happy for the folks that really enjoy these games to be able to like get the have a way to play it now where hobbyists like us, folks like us who are really super seriously into it, guys that tinker, guys that mess around with the old stuff, we have access to that because we've collected it and we've
Yes,
held on to it.
absolutely.
We know how to work everything. And a lot of people don't, so it's really cool that we have that. And it's also honestly one of my favorite parts about the expo in general is that we
Hmm.
we offer people like this 3-day vacation to their childhood. Um, but I want to talk about the expo.
Hmm.
Obviously, you have a lot going on. Retro PC will only grow more and more and more,
Yes.
which obviously means I know, like you said, George is picking up. He forget it. He's picking up amazing things all the time. What are you looking to do for the next year? What does 2023 look like for the Retro PC section on LIRetro?
Well, I'm looking at depending on if I'm gonna have access to the same room and stuff. It's just gonna be mostly that, but bigger. Like I will probably add a couple more emulated machines. I do want a very like I do want to expand the Oregon Trail section in maybe more interesting ways than rather than just put more machines with Oregon Trail. Like, oh, we had 6, oh, next year it's going to be 10. Maybe that's not
Yeah.
quite what it's going to be. Maybe there's going to be Oregon Trails that people have not played. Oregon Trail
Yeah.
2, Oregon Trail 3, the Yukon Trail, the Maya
Oh,
Trail.
I was gonna bring
Uh,
up the Yukon Trail.
the Amazon Trail. Yeah, so maybe that it was floated before that we might even have a Oregon Trail competition. The details haven't been worked out, but it's always on the table, and I would love to do that.
Yeah.
But the main, of course, addition would be adding actual vintage hardware, which
Okay.
we really didn't have much of before, and all of a sudden it looks like we just in the last few months have acquired a lot more than we had. Even and that comes down to monitors and stuff too, which is obviously quite different because on those emulated machines we use modern displays. And if you're going to have a real vintage PC experience, you need to have one of those old CRT monitors that will give you a headache after 30 minutes. So it's like, so we're going to have that. And basically, that's the plan. The plan is to provide both the fun, accessible stuff and as well as like more vintage stuff for people to just play around with it, see more of the thing. So, like, if a kid comes in and says, "Oh, I want to see, I don't know, Windows 98," and how that works, we can just be like, right this way. And
Yeah, that's really cool. What kind of vintage hardware are you looking at?
everything we have a couple like 386 machines, a couple of 46, a few Pentiums we already had out last year, but like
Hmm.
there'll be more. And we placed it in the Brandon section. The PC Junior, we did
Yeah.
not have any games for it. We will. I'm making it my life's goal. Just for the next year, people can play games on the PC Junior. But PC Juniors are pretty hard to come by, and we have two of them. And for all the time, even though they're both working in a great condition, one of them is practically brand new.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything to put on it because it's a bit of a pain. We will have games on the PC Junior,
Oh,
and
that's great to hear.
all this other stuff, to just people to play, to experience different sound devices, different music, different eras of gaming, because those machines, the spread actually allows us to sort of some of them are more fit for games maybe from late 80s, very early 90s, but some of them are better for games from like the mid 90s. We had some racing game on the Pentiums and stuff. And because remember how fast technology progressed back in those days. So the game's like
Yeah.
completely different from year to year.
I mean, you look at even console generations, right? Console
Oh, yeah,
generations
sure.
back in the 80s and 90s are way different than today.
Of course.
So I mean, PC was moving at an accelerated rate, and like you said, year to year is almost vastly different. If you could get your hands on like one dream piece to have for retro PC, do you have one? Do you have like a grail?
I do, and it saddens me to say this, but I had a chance of picking it up 3 years ago, and I missed it. And I was going to do it for the Expo specifically. That was going to be my excuse. I was going to buy it, but I was going to like my excuse was going to be like, oh, this is for the Expo, because and I mean it's practically useless. So there's a mid '90s virtual reality helmet for PCs that's supported by like 3.5 games, and it works. It works. It's
Oh,
thing, and they're so rare. It's hard to come by one that's like even working. It's even like it's hard to because it's not just the helmet, but it's also a card that you have to plug into
yeah,
and the controller. So they're hard to come by just complete and
yeah,
stuff. And
yeah,
somebody put it up on eBay. So it was the year before the pandemic, right? So like that was the
yeah,
year of that expo, when I first participated, not as a guest,
yeah.
because before it I just came in, did a talk, and then I spent 2 days playing games. But then Joel was just like, "Get to work," and I was like, "Okay." Uh, and then they stopped giving me talks, which is okay. But yeah, so I was gonna. Somebody put it up for like a fairly high price for what it was. Now I know in retrospect, because of it was also right around the time the PC hardware vintage market exploded. In
Yeah,
retrospect, of course, that means that price meant nothing. But it
yeah,
was, let's say, several $100s that I
yeah,
maybe was willing to pay.
yeah.
I looked at it. Nobody picked it up, and it was marked. Not only I saw that it was complete, but it was also marked as tested.
Uh,
And I looked at it, and nobody was picking it up. Nobody was picking it up because it was for a lot of money. And then the seller started dropping it by like $50 every week.
oh,
And it got to the point where I was at work, and I was just like, oh, that's it. I should get it. Like it came like, maybe it wasn't once a week, maybe it was like every like 3 days it dropped. It was like almost on the clock. It like dropped by like a significant margin. And I was like, and that's when I was already participating in the expo. So I was just like, I should get it, because my excuse is going to be like, yeah, sure, I'm paying for it, but I'm going to bring it for the expo where people will
yeah,
will,
yeah.
will will play it. And that morning I was at work like maybe for 2 hours, and I just pulled out my phone. I looked at the listing, and somebody bought it.
Oh,
And since then, each one that popped out for about 3 times the price of what it was, and got snatched up like instantly. And which to me says, unless we're very lucky and George will be able to pick it up from somebody's backyard, uh, I am not getting it on eBay. So, but
hey,
it's a
well,
it's a VFX1 headgear.
VFX1 headgear. Well,
Yeah,
folks out there, keep your eyes on that.
Forte VFX1.
Keep your eyes and ears peeled out there, everyone listening. And if you do come across one, send it our way, please. Send the link. Send the link. I have full faith in the and all you folks with all of us really with LIRetro. Um, we have a very good aptitude for sniffing out very good deals and very rare stuff. But it's like one of those things where it's like you got to be in it to win it, right? Because it's like when you're
Yes,
searching for it and find it, it'll find it. So I think I can't say for certain that I think you'll get it, but I hope you do,
we
and
have
I
other
hope that we
interesting
come across
stuff.
this.
We actually have
Yeah.
stuff sitting in boxes unopened that will. I have a couple of rare PC light guns which only work with like one game, and I have them. And I think Bill actually found a video card that they might work with, and it's already at the
Ooh.
office. So I literally brand new in boxes, unopened, even by me, and they're from my personal collection. But as soon as I have time, I'm gonna open those boxes and the two shiny light guns for PCs that nobody even knows existed. Somebody like recently tried to like argue with me that they don't exist, and I was like, well, luckily for me, I don't have to guess because I have them sitting right next to me. But I mean, how many times in your life do you get that happens? So like
Yeah,
I would
never.
probably also assume they don't exist, but
Yeah,
they
exactly.
exist, and people will be able to check them out. So there's
That's
more
really cool.
stuff.
Oh, there's always going to be more stuff, so
Oh
that's
yeah.
really cool. So I always tell everyone listening that they got to stay tuned to our social media platforms or your social media platforms, and I'll ask you to give them at the end of the episode here, so that people can follow you as well. Um, so wrapping up here, getting close to the end. Just one, just this is a kind of pie in the sky kind of question. Is there anything that really excites you about where retro PC gaming is going? Because I understand it's weird to say that, and it's a weird mentality of what to think of how retro gets handled in the future. But with retro and vintage PC gaming, is there anything that really excites you about it in the future?
Many things excite me about retro PC gaming in the future. Mainly because when I started talking about it, even before, people seem to not really care much about PC gaming. Just in general, the markets were once again separate from PC and console. And even when the first retro video game in store started open, I forget, and I shouldn't name the names, but like I went to one of like the first three. Uh, um, Retro video game stores here on Long Island, and I just walked into it, and of course there was tons of console games and stuff, and I was just like, "Oh, do you have any PC games here?" And the guy just looked at me like I had two heads, and he was just like, "Well, can't you download all of those?" And in my head, of course, I go, well, I can probably download every single ROM that you have on your shelf as well. Like, what does that have to do with anything? To his credit, though, the other guy came out, went to the back, and found a shrink wrap PC game in the thing,
Hey,
which I bought. I still have it, which was the port of Children of the Atom.
oh,
Um,
nice,
yeah,
nice.
except without the gamepad. Some of those come bundled with the Gravis gamepad. That one didn't, but I don't care. It's a shrink wrap PC game, not a very popular port either. So, but it's a very good one because it's done by Probe, people who did all the good ports of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
fighting
yeah,
games. So
yeah,
yeah, so that worked out. But like, and now of course every market has exploded, so it's very different. But that also means that people get to experience those games. Like you really had
yeah,
to like convince people to do it, and really had to look at like. I could only at certain points in my life only find people online who talked about it. That's no longer the case.
yeah,
People play DOS games all the time. Again, they're available on all those digital services or even on handhelds, even on phones. Like I mean, like I do own like 10 copies of Another World, right, which is like the most amazing game ever. But like you can play it on your phone. You can buy an official version, which is like tappy tap, and it works.
yeah.
It's on Switch. It's on whatever next 10. Another World is never going away, thankfully, because it's an amazing game. But and another part of it, what I'm excited about is when it comes to vintage hardware. Sadly, the vintage hardware is dying, and again, the market is up where you could pick up like an old computer for like $10 because or off the curb of the road because nobody wanted it. Now people want insane amount of money for like if you want an Adlib Gold, you can be ready to shell out like $3,500, right, but without the box.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, but I mean, whatever, market is market. But at the same time, people are now, because again, certain things happen, and one of those most recent things is the availability of FPGA chips, which of course revolutionized everything in retro gaming, just in general. And it comes to vintage PC stuff, where people make new hardware for the vintage computers that makes vintage computing so much easier. I have a few of
Yeah.
those things, and there's only more. I've seen new sound cards. Like, I may have a few like in a drawer next to me right now that are like brand new, but they are made for vintage gaming. People do all kinds of stuff like dongles that will allow you, like using Wi-Fi connection, internet connection as a modem connection that allows you to do all kinds of stuff that you couldn't do before just because the technology was obsolete. And those are things that genuinely excite me. Like I see those new things, replacements for old hardware or clones of hardware that's like either just dead or it costs an insane amount of money, but now you can buy a replacement which is essentially the same because it has all the same components but it's brand new. And for somebody who just wants to experience the experience and not the experience of paying $3,000 for a thing that maybe not even working anymore. If that's more important to you, then you can do it for a lot less money. And just enthusiasts, all those people, like hardware people and everybody, like they come up with some really really neat stuff, and I'm very excited to see it. And of course I'm excited to see just other people getting into the field, playing more games. And that's of course, the longer time goes on, the more accessible things become the way they are now. So I'm actually very happy.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, you're seeing that across the board, not just with PC gaming. Everything's become more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Retro devices are being built, and
Yeah.
they're being built with a lot of care. I actually today just got an analog pocket, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's a beautiful device, and has access to all these old games. And seeing that with PC, seeing with the console gaming is really really special. Um, so Anatoly, I really thank you. I want to thank you for your time with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great conversation. Great to talk to you. Great to talk about retro PC. I'm really excited to see what you do next year with the Expo. It's kind of hard for all of us. We try to see everything when we're working the Expo, but I wish I
Yes.
could spend more time. But we're just so strapped for time. But Anatoly, before we sign off, tell everyone where they can find you on the internet so that they can follow your stuff or check you out on social media or whatever.
Anywhere where you can do a search for Das Nostalgic, I am there. That's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Mastodon, and maybe some others I forgot about. But yeah, and generally at this point in time, I feel like if you're just looking for anything DOS gaming related, I'm usually there already in one capacity or another. That's sort of a benefit of being an old guy on the internet, with a very niche hobby that I never gave up. So yeah, DOS Nostalgic is whenever it's convenient for you. You can get in touch with me and see what I'm doing.
All right, folks, that's DOS Nostalgic out there all over social media where you can find Anatoly Shashkin. I want to thank you again. Thanks for being part of LIRetro. Thanks for being a part of this podcast. And we'll see you at the Expo next year. And folks, just keep tuning in here to the Long Island Retro podcast. We're going to be talking with mostly, I think, with folks that work at the Expo and their fields that they are experts in, like Anatoly here in Retro PC. And thank you for listening. You can find us at LIRetro all over the internet, or you could search us out at LIRetro.com. Anatoly, anything else before we wrap?
No, just play more DOS games.
That's right. Play those DOS games and look for those DOS games on the internet. So, folks, thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.